Okay, once again, minimum 10.
So, can you imagine living in an apartment, barracks, or a dorm room where at 6:30 in the morning you have some random person that just goes running up and down the hallway screaming at the top of their lungs, "We did it! We did it! We won the national title!" On January 4th of 2003, I was that guy running up and down the hallway screaming because I just witnessed my favorite football team, the Ohio State Buckeyes, winning their first national championship in 34 years. That national championship game, the 2002 BCS championship, is widely considered one of the greatest national championship games ever played. And there's three main reasons behind that. All right, first reason being the fact that Miami was huge favorites going into that game. They were expected to blow Ohio State off the field. All right. Another reason behind that is because of the rosters comparing the two schools to each other. Miami's roster versus Ohio State's roster. And then finally, of course, the actual key plays of the game, that actually made it into the great game that it was. So right off, when you're talking about how Miami was favored in that game, I remember at one point leading up to that game that the odds in Vegas were saying that Miami was favored by as much as 17 points going into that game. A Sports Illustrated article I read that was written the day after the game, basically recapping the national championship, said Miami was favored by 11 and a half points. Going into that national championship game, Miami was also on a 34-game win streak. All right, in those 34 games that they'd won straight, they demolished almost every team they played. They were winning by double digits, winning by 20 and 30 points in some cases. All right, Ohio State going into that game was undefeated as well, just like Miami in that particular season. But the big difference was Ohio State and the way that they won, six of their victories that season was by 7 points or less. So you could see they kind of struggled more against competition than Miami had. All right, and then finally about that Miami's legacy going into that game. A lot of different analysts were talking about the Miami Hurricanes of that year being possibly the greatest college football team that had ever fielded in college football's history. All right. So talking about that as well, you also have to compare the rosters of the two schools. All right. With Miami, they had in the next two drafts after that 2002 championship, Miami had 17 players drafted into the NFL, including a record at the time, 10 first rounders. 10 first rounders. It's crazy, right? Ohio State, on the other hand, over the next 2 years, had they had more players drafted, 18 over, but majority of that was 2 years later. The draft after that national championship game, the highest drafted player out of Ohio State was a late second rounder, Mike Doss, an All-American safety. They did end up having 3 first rounders the following year's draft. But again, you could really see the dramatic difference in the strengths of the rosters. All right, so now that we talked about basically the build-up to the game, the favoritism towards Miami and those strengths of the rosters, we'll talk about the key plays of the game and what really made it such a great game. It started off with Miami's first offensive series. Their Heisman Trophy finalist quarterback, Ken Dorsey, was sacked twice in their opening offensive series, really setting the tone for Ohio State's defense and letting Miami know, hey, you're going to be in for a fight for the rest of this game. All right, so everything was back and forth throughout the whole game. Even going into the second half, there was a huge play that happened was really momentum changing. When Ohio State's first offensive series of the second half, they drove down inside Miami's 10-yard line, and the quarterback, Craig Krenzel, threw a pass that was intercepted by All-American Sean Taylor by Miami, and he raced up the sidelines after the interception. And I remember thinking to myself as he was running up the sidelines, oh my God, here it is. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. Miami's about to blow this thing open. But lo and behold, out of nowhere, here comes the freshman conference running back for Ohio State, Maurice Clarett, chases Sean Taylor down from out of nowhere and actually strips the ball from him and recovers a fumble, basically getting a turnover off of a turnover and swinging momentum right back into Ohio State's favor. Later, as the game again progressed on, it's still kind of back and forth. But going into the fourth quarter, Miami's other Heisman Trophy finalist, Willis McGahee, their star running back, started building up momentum. And he's gashing Ohio State's defense yard after yard after yard. And it really started to seem like momentum was starting to go into Miami's direction until a dramatic knee injury took Willis McGahee out of the game. He caught a screen pass out of the backfield, and Ohio State safety Will Allen came up and hit him with a completely legal hit, was just low, and you just watched McGahee's knee buckle in the other direction. He ended up tearing his ACL, his MCL, and his LCL. So again, just a drastic hit. When that injury happened, you could see Miami kind of got deflated a little bit there for a while. But they were able to fight back, got down to the field, and the next big key play was their kicker kicking a 40-yard field goal as time expired, sending that game into overtime. And that ended up making that BCS title game the first and only BCS championship to go into overtime. In that first overtime, Miami was able to score rather quickly. And it was up to Ohio State to then score to even it up and send it to a second overtime or obviously lose the game. So it ended up being fourth down for Ohio State. Craig Krenzel throws a pass into the end zone to Chris Gamble, and he jumps up and he fights with the defensive back from Miami. The ball falls incomplete. Miami's team goes crazy. All of their fans go crazy. They think they just won a national championship. And then all of a sudden everybody's hearing the whistles blow, and they see the flag on the field. And this was like a big controversial pass interference call for a long time. They got called by one of the referees, basically giving Ohio State new life. They had 4 more downs to try and get into the end zone, which they did. They scored another touchdown, tied it up, sent it to a second overtime. Second overtime came around. Ohio State scored a touchdown, taking the lead. It was up to Miami to answer back. Miami gets to fourth down and in what I like to refer as the last stand for Ohio State's defense. Ken Dorsey took a step back, and C. Grant, a senior linebacker for Ohio State, blitzed. Nobody was there to block him. He gets right to Ken Dorsey, grabbed him around his collar, and spun him to the ground. Dorsey, in a last-ditch effort, just kind of winged the ball up into the air, and it just, did the little quack, quack, duck thing. And senior linebacker Matt Wilhelm for Ohio State jumped up and batted it to the ground, and Ohio State won their first national title in 34 years. And that led to me running up and down the hallway screaming, "We won! We won! We're the national champions!" So again, that really helps you understand how this was such a great national championship game. And again, there were 3 keys behind it. The fact that Miami was such huge favorites to win the game, the roster differences between the two, and then finally those key plays that led to that once again being considered such a great national championship. If any one of y'all ever want to be entertained and watch a great historical college football game, go back and see if you can find a DVD of the 2002 BCS National Championship. Thank you.